I'm strong in faith.
Faith can move mountains.
Radio Maria
91.3 FM.
The voice of truth.
Hello, my beautiful people. Wonderful to be here once again. We thank God for the gift of life. This is your favorite show, Life Essential Talk, a talk show where we talk about marriage, effective parenting, family values and relationships, as well as fundamental life issues. I remain your host, Uche Chukwuma. Well, last week, as usual, we had very interesting topics with an engaging guest. Well, today won't be different from what we normally engage in. We have another beautiful topic today, exciting topic, interesting topic today, which is marriage and keeping secrets. We also have an exciting guest. Well, he has been here, okay, I can say he's a regular. Can I use that word, regular? He's a regular guest, and he's here today to say something to us about marriage and keeping secrets. Well, I won't reveal who he is till after this musical break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, my beautiful people, to Life Essential Talk on Radio Maria, the voice of truth. Well, it's time for us to introduce our very special guest. And our guest today is Mr. Henry Kumba. Mr. Henry Kumba is a marriage coach. Well, he's here today to tell us all we need to know about marriage and keeping secrets. Mr. Henry Kumba, it's so nice to have you again on the show.
Good evening, Uche. Good evening, listeners. Which is very nice to be here again. It's my pleasure.
Yes, it's my pleasure too. All right, so Mr. Kumba, let's get down to the business of the day. Now, when we talk about marriage and keeping secrets, what comes to mind?
Okay. Thank you once again for having me on the program. Must first and foremost start by saying you're doing a great job. You're changing lives.
Thank you.
You might not know them. You might not be able to put a stamp on the number of lives that you've changed, but I know this program is making a lot of impact, and it's something that couples should look forward to, and I believe they do. Okay. And so when we talk about keeping secrets in marriage, it's something that goes both ways. You could say there shouldn't even be secrets in marriage in the first place, right? Because the two have become one. Exactly. And so there shouldn't be secrets at all. If there are ever going to be secrets at all in marriage, then it has to be one that both parties are aware of, and they are not going to let in a third party, into that particular information. Because a secret is something that is not seen, or that is not known, and that is just kept away from public view. Okay. And so if there's going to be secrets in marriage, then it should be something that not just one person is keeping, but it's something that both parties are aware of, and then they just know that, okay, this is just between us, this is just us. Okay. This is our business, as it were, because it shouldn't be something that where it's wrong, is something that only one person has knowledge
of it,
right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, although there are instances, I believe, as we're going forward, as we go along in the program,
yes,
we'll know certain instances where you keep them to yourself, right? But however, in those instances where one party has to keep to themselves, then it doesn't have to be deliberate, right? Because if it's something you deliberately kept away, then that is when you call it a secret in a marriage, right? But if something that's perhaps because a couple you've been married for, because there's no full disclosure before marriage, more like you sit down with your spouse or your would-be spouse, and you start saying, okay, this is about me, this is about, no matter how long you have that conversation, you will not exhaust everything. And so chances are that you've not had conversations along certain lines. So there are certain things about that person or the other person that they've not told you, just yet. In that regard, then it may be seen as a secret, but it is not deliberate, in the sense that the discussion has not just come up just yet. And so when you talk about secrets in a marriage, then you're talking about things within the marriage, about both couples, either individually or together, that is not meant for public consumption, just you and your spouse.
Okay. So what if it's between the couples.
Yes, if it's between the couples, then there are a number of things that you could just keep, between yourself. Your next goal, what's your next move regarding your future, your plans, the things that you intend to do, your aspiration or the weakness of the other person, the strengths of the other person. And those are stuff that is between the couple, right? Both of you know that, okay, these are my strengths. These are the things. When he sleeps at night, he snores, right? Okay, when she eats, when she finishes eating, she likes licking the plate and licking her fingers. Those are just things that are just both of you. Some these minor secrets, that are just both of you. They are personal things that are personal, that are close to heart to that person. Those are between the couples, and so those things are allowed in the marriage. You don't just go out on the streets and you meet people and start saying, you don't know when my husband sleeps, he snores, or he has one particular bad habit, or or not, or he doesn't talk, or he doesn't keep things off limit. He just talks anyhow and stuff like that.
That shouldn't be out.
That shouldn't be out. It's just you and your spouse.
Okay.
Yes.
So what about now? Let me go to the very strong one. Let me use the word strong.
Yeah.
There is something you're withholding from your spouse, maybe from your husband or from your wife. You find it difficult to tell your spouse whatever it is. You see it as your secret.
Yes.
You have never divulged it to your spouse before. What do you think about that?
Okay, yeah, there are, like I said earlier, there are certain instances where it may be allowed to keep certain things to yourself, right? But these things you keep to yourself shouldn't be things that happen in the marriage. They should be probably things before the marriage. Okay.
Okay, if there are things before the marriage, you can keep them to yourself.
Yeah, there are some that you can keep, because in as much as you have secrets, I would say secrets that should not be kept are secrets that are things that have the potential. That's things that should not be kept by one of the couple, right? One of the persons in the marriage.
Yes.
Things that should not be kept are things that have the potential of destroying the marriage when they become public knowledge. So instead of keeping them a secret, you would rather open up to the other person and tell them, okay, this is this, that is that. But things that don't have the possibility, and most of these things are things that actually happen when you are single, right? Before you got into the marriage. Let me give you an instance.
Okay.
You talk about past relationships. When you get into the marriage, I would advise most of the times that don't ask and don't tell. Because most people have this notion, they have this belief, they live in this fantasy world of this juvenile fantasy of having virgin groom and virgin bride. And so it depends on the temperament or the personality of the other spouse. Some may not be able to handle the truths in that line.
Some might not handle.
Some might not be able to handle truths in that line. And so for me, I would always say that in as much as, no matter how dirty and bad your sexual past was before, in as much as you are no longer that person now that you are in marriage,
you don't need to.
It should be off limits. Yeah, it should be off limits.
Because in some cases you hear maybe the husband or the wife asking the partner, oh, how was your past life? How was this? And sometimes when you open up, because they use it against you.
Yeah, they do use it against you, because one thing I've noticed about people asking you to be honest is that some of the things they are pushing for you to be honest about are actually things they themselves are not ready for the answer.
Yes.
And so they are not ready. They think they are ready for the answer.
So you now wonder, why do they ask?
By the time, you wonder why they ask. Because by the time the person opens up to you and says, okay, this is who I was, but I'm no longer that person, chances are that the person starts looking for things that resemble the past that you told them, even though you've changed. And then by the time you do something that resembles your old self, it comes up. You understand? It comes up, and then at some point they might not even trust you. Perhaps you are someone who, before you got married, you were not good in finances. You couldn't handle finances so well, right? And then you open up to that person, and even when you say the person, a spouse now finds difficult to trust the other person with his finances, because he remembers what he or she said, that while I was single, I couldn't keep monies, I couldn't keep secrets, I couldn't do certain things, and so the person finds it difficult to start trusting you, with such things. And so in that regard, I would say, just keep it. There's no point. I mean, as much as you are not the person you used to be, keep those things to yourself. There's
All
no
right,
point
because
in
I've had a
that.
case whereby a woman told the husband that she had an abortion when she was single. And when they got, after they're married for some years, there was no child.
Yeah.
Do you know that the man kept on using that
as a point.
Secret, let me call it secret, that thing she told him. She used it against her.
And the thing is, it may not be even related.
It might not be.
It
wasn't even related at all. Yes.
And funny enough, in such instance, the man no longer looks at himself, because infertility is not just
a woman.
Yeah?
It's not a woman
at that point in time, he's only thinking about the woman, So he said, let's go get checked. Let's get to the hospital. Let's go get checked. And he said, no, I don't have an issue. You were the one that was carrying out abortion and all that. And so those things happen. However, dependent on the maturity of the other person, there are things that may not be off limit. The thing is a thin line. You don't know the reaction. Even if you do know the reaction, you never can tell when that person snaps and starts using those things against you. So the reaction of the other person when you open up about certain secrets, you cannot predict it. No matter how hard you try, you may not be able to predict it at all.
Okay, so what you're trying to say now, those things you did when you were single, you shouldn't bring them.
Yeah, they should be brought in. Some of them should be
into your marriage.
They shouldn't be put on the table at all. In as much as it's not something that will spring up again, and then key word there is in as much as you are no longer that person. But if you are still that person who you were while you were single, now that you're married, if you're going to bring it up to the table, it is so that your spouse will be able to help you grow or come out of it, right? But as much as you're no longer that person, because you can never tell how that person would react. You can never tell how your spouse will react when you open up on certain things. This does not mean that there are things you should keep secret, right? It doesn't mean that every other thing that you did while you were coming up, while you were growing up, because some actually enable you understand, enable the other person understand you, your background, how you're coming up, and all that. They do help. But if it's whatever it is that would negatively affect your marriage, it doesn't mean you say the person is jovial, he smiles, he doesn't get angry, I think I can open up to him and tell him every other thing. But what should not be kept secret are things that happen within the marriage. From the moment you say I do, everything should be on the table. Everything should be on the table. But the things that happened while you were single, before you got married, for me, I think for some, there's no point. As long as you are no longer that person.
And as long as it won't affect your marriage. There's no need bringing them. Okay, I think that's a very good one. Please, let's take this musical break, and when we return, we continue with this very exciting conversation. Oh, beautiful people, if you're just tuning in to the Radio Nigeria 91.3 FM, we are still on Life Essential Talk, your favorite talk show. This talk show is all about marriage, effective parenting, family values and relationships, as well as fundamental life show. Well, I am here today with our very special guest, Mr. Henry Kumba, talking on marriage and keeping secrets. Okay, so Mr. Kumba, now let's get to this. From what you said, it's okay to keep certain secrets, especially before marriage. What about in marriage?
Okay, well, in marriage, it is never okay to keep any secret.
Even if the secret can change the dynamics of that marriage?
It is never okay to keep a secret in a marriage, because first and foremost, you need to understand that marriage is two people becoming one, right? Yes. And at that point in time, I don't see any, let me not say I don't see any secret that could change. There are many secrets that could change. But these are not secret. These in that point in time, in marriage, they become events that you keep to yourself, right?
Okay.
Happenings that you keep to yourself. Happenings that the other partner could have been privy to, but because you twisted the story, you gave a different narrative from what they suspect, trying to, move them away from the hints that they have. At that point in time, it becomes a secret. Whereas when they got a hint, what you should have done at that point in time was to open up and say, this is actually it. but I need your help to help me walk through this particular issue. Nothing should be off the table. I know of instances in marriage, like you talked about, things that can change the dynamics in a marriage, right? People keep secrets like a terminal diagnosis. One of the couple, I know of a man who was diagnosed of cancer and never told the wife about it. I know another who was diagnosed of HIV and never said a word about it until the wife discovered his antiretroviral drug, the PAC.
Wow.
You get. And so at the point where you get, because knowing fully well that certain diseases like HIV, for instance, is not just gotten through intercourse alone, right?
Not, yes.
There are many other ways whereby the person could get it, and then there are ways to walk through them. In as long as you can clearly identify and say, okay, it wasn't through sexual intercourse, perhaps an unsterilized needle pricked me somewhere, somewhere, somehow.
Blood,
exactly, something somewhere, somehow. But he decided to keep it secret, and until she found out and went to get tested, and at that point in time, she realized he had been keeping this from her, and she also was positive at that point in time. And so in that instance, it becomes going back to ask, what else has this person been keeping away from me?
Yes.
That's one thing about discovering secrets that you do not tell.
Exactly.
And so when it comes to marriage, there shouldn't be anything secret. Everything should be on the table, and that's the reason why communication is key. Communication in a marriage is key. You should be able to open up to the person from the moment where you're about to go into an endeavor. The person should begin, and if the things don't go the way you plan, or you encounter certain challenges along the way, or you need to deviate from the original plan which both of you set out, to do, if there's need for you to deviate, the other person should also be aware. But if you deviate from the plan, and it therefore means that certain things that happen along the line when you deviate from the original goal that both of you set out to achieve, if you deviate from that goal, then it means certain things that happen along the line, you would also want to keep them secret, because the question will be, how come this thing is happening like this? We didn't intend for it. We didn't intend to go that way. How come this is happening? So for you to keep that secret, then it means that you've deviated from the original goal. But if you need to deviate from the original plan that both of you have as a couple, then the other person should know as well. That way, there are no secrets and everything is just in plain sight.
Okay, what if your spouse is how he or she is? If it becomes a known affair, that is, if she gets to know it, he gets to know it, it will be a problem for that person.
Yes. Now,
like you talked about the cancer, because I don't really understand why you should have cancer, why someone should have cancer and not tell the other in marriage. Because this is a terminal illness that both should try to handle together. You can't do it alone. So I feel for the man not to tell the wife, maybe he didn't really know how the wife would take it. So I'm just trying to say this in this line. What if, because of the sensitivity of your wife or husband, you decide to keep it to yourself?
Okay. So, but let me before I answer that, let me quickly say this: that there's nobody that doesn't have a secret. And when I say this, I mean there's no one that does not have a secret.
Yes.
Not only in marriage, even outside. There's no one that doesn't have a secret.
Yes.
Let me give you an instance. I've never seen a CV that says, where the person lists on the CV and says, I am addicted to coming late to work, or when you don't pay me my salary before on an agreed date, then I shut down tools. You don't see those things on the CV. They put out their best. And even when you're filling an appraisal form in your place of employment, you're filling an appraisal form, they ask if you have job satisfaction. Whether or not you have job satisfaction, you tick yes. You've got that job satisfaction. Whereas in your heart, you know that you are not satisfied on this job.
True.
You probably don't even like your boss. They ask you, what's your relationship? Is your relationship with your boss cordial? You said, yes, I have a very cordial relationship. Whereas you're biting your fingers and saying, if only I write the truth, this sheet of paper will not be enough for me. So those things exist. Now, when it comes to saying, you probably kept something from your spouse because you don't know how that person will react to it, which goes back to me saying there are decisions you take on the spot that are spontaneous. Those ones I can agree that say, okay, you come back and then the person reacts in a certain way, or the person gets to know and reacts in a certain way. But most decisions in a marriage have got to be on the drawing board, where the man knows or the woman knows that this is where we are heading. Like I left home now, my wife knows I am right here on Radio Maria, right? And so if along the line I tell her something happened, I got a flat tire in Kubwa.
Okay.
She wonders what took me to Kubwa, right? Yes. Because she knows that I was headed for Radio Maria. Radio Maria is not in Kubwa. So what gave me a flat tire in Kubwa? So it goes back to say what I said earlier, that it doesn't, the issue of saying you don't know how the person will react shouldn't even arise. Okay. Because in marriage, it is events that are kept from the knowledge of the other person that become secrets. But if you let the events that happen, if you let the changes that you need to make known, right, whatever happens along the line is foreknowledge, is something the person already knows about or has an idea about of the possibility of such a thing happening. And so it always reverts back to consultations. But I know there are decisions that you need to take on the spot, and then if there are errors, go back and say it was on the spot decision that I had to take at the heat of the moment. I didn't have time to think about it, and so this is the consequence that accrues from this. But if you try to manage, because most times it's crisis management, just trying to, okay, I'm the head of the home, right? And so I decided to take a certain decision, maybe to invest our life savings in a particular venture without the knowledge of my wife, right? Or with her knowledge, but then not with 100% buy-in. And so I invest our whole life savings in an investment. And then the investment goes down the drain. But because I want to save face as the husband, I come back home. This is not me now thinking, how would my wife react? It is me wanting to save face, you know, as the head of the house, and having been the one that took that decision. I decided not to tell her our investments have gone down the drain. But instead, I reduced how much I put into our joint account, because I'm trying to salvage some money so that perhaps by the time she asks, I should be able to tender something. You see, in that instance, what you've done is an event occurred along the line in a plan both of you took, and instead of coming back to report that event as it is, you altered it. And then by altering one particular event, you just see yourself going down a roller coaster of secrets upon secret upon secret upon secret. So for you to avoid, or to say in a marriage you don't know how that person would react, when you say you don't know how that person would react, it comes back to
saying, or you know how the person will react and it won't be good.
Yes, for fear of it. Like for fear of it. But yes, there's no point. I mean, there's nobody you'd rather be vulnerable to. There's nobody I'd rather appear stupid to, like my wife, right? I'd rather appear stupid before her, tell her things the way they are. I mean, right the way they are, in as much as it wasn't deliberate. In as much as what led me to that point was not deliberate. You know, it happened in the spur of the moment. Now, someone might say, okay, in the spur of the moment, the thing happened, maybe because I got into a relationship with somebody outside of my marriage, and then I come back home and said, it's a spur of the moment. That is not a spur of, that doesn't count. That is not inclusive in what we're saying here, because for you to step outside of your marriage, there are many other considerations. There are many other things. It doesn't just wake up and creep in, right? There are other factors that come into play for you to step outside of your marriage and have a relationship and then decide to keep it a secret. There are other factors that come into play, but every other thing are things that the spouse, you know, both parties are aware of from the get-go. And so as they get aware of these things from the get-go, it is for you to say, if there's any alteration at all, you let the other person know. There's no point of saying, I'm the man in this house, any decision I take is final. There's no point, you know, bringing that to the table. Whatever it is, you're expecting a particular profit margin in any business you do, it is safe to let your spouse know, this is what I'm expecting. And if what comes in is not exactly what you said, it is less than what was expected, still let them know. There's no point trying to gold plate anything at all.
All right, because you said something now, you mentioned relationship. That one is very, very sensitive.
Yeah, it is.
You can imagine telling your spouse that this is what you got involved in. But don't you think the hurt could take years for the order to heal?
Yes, and
is this something you're really ready to handle?
That's why I said, like we said earlier, when these things, it's difficult, it's hard. That's why I said, you don't say I just stumbled into relationship with somebody outside of my marriage. You don't stumble into that.
No,
it's
you
something
don't.
That grows over time. Now, for that particular one, when if a spouse finds himself, you know, emotionally involved with somebody else outside of their marriage. It is not something that doesn't. And so, but you can't keep that a secret, irrespective of how the spouse, the other person would act.
Yes.
You cannot keep that a secret. Why? Because you stand the risk of blackmail. And that blackmail can spoil your marriage. As long as you've come to your senses to say, this is not right. You put an end to that relationship and you come back. I would rather I tell her than she finding out. Even if after the relationship has ended and she ends up finding out that he actually stepped out of marriage, or he ends up finding out that she actually stepped out of the marriage.
How will the man take it?
It is best because whichever way, even if it ends, you end it, or the person finds out some way, somehow, like we said earlier, as long as it does not have the potential of affecting your marriage. But a secret relationship outside, whether it began, whether it has ended, has the potential, it has the possibility of hurting your marriage in one way or the other. Right? In one way or the other. Because how did he end? Whether or not he ended amicably, the woman says, okay, I'm done. The guy says, I'm done. And then someday, somehow, perhaps when you are at the peak of your career, one flimsy text message from your past just crops up. And then you lose that
and your spouse sees it. Okay.
Your spouse sees it. And she's wondering, she wants to go back, even if it's 10 years ago, or even if it's 50 years ago, he wants to go back and revisit the events that led to that particular relationship. Right? Yes.
Well, it can be difficult.
It can be difficult. But that's the reason why I said earlier that events that happen along the way that you don't talk about, you're not getting what you expect from your spouse. Talk about it, right? Talk about it, because those are things that could lead you to now say, okay, you're having an affair outside that you're keeping secret. And another thing is, parents say, I've not got to that point yet, but I hear some parents say they have one child that touches them differently. They love all their children, but they have a particular liking to one of their child. They don't say it. They may not tell us the others, but they admit it, to themselves and say, this particular child, I just don't know why. Perhaps the situation, the circumstances that surround their birth, resemblance, mannerisms and all that. They may not say it all out, but then there's a particular child, that they love, and so they don't say it. But then they keep that to themselves. And so that is one other thing that you say, okay, within a marriage. And then a man is married to a woman, and then his in-laws don't like him per se. And so spiteful things they may say behind the man's back. She may stand up and defend her husband, but then she may decide not to tell him that this person said this about you, because she wants it to end. And so she doesn't want any rancor. And so she defends him, in the presence of those people, and say, never speak about my husband like that again. And she leaves it at that. She knows that this person has bad blood towards her husband, but she doesn't go telling him, if you heard what this person said about you and all that. So those are little things. That is an event that has happened in secret, but you keep them to yourself. All
right, so let's quickly open the phone line for our dear listeners. The number to call is 081 084 47518. 081 084 47518. You can send SMS or you send your message via WhatsApp. So let's hear you. Marriage and keeping secrets. Have you been keeping secrets? All right. So, okay, Mr. Kumba, now let's look at this. Now, you strongly believe that, but okay, we have a caller on the line. Hello. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Mommy Chioma from Life Camp.
Okay, Mommy Chioma from Life Camp, sorry. So let's hear you. Hello? Mommy Chioma. Oh, we have lost her. Please, Mommy Chioma, call us back. All right. So now let's look at the effects. You strongly believe that is important not to keep any secret from your partner, from your spouse. So what are the effects? of keeping secrets.
Okay. Now, the effects of keeping secrets.
Okay, please hold on to your thought.
Right,
I think we have another caller on the line. Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. What's your name?
Yeah, I'm Mr. Smile.
Yeah.
I'm Mr. Smile. Yeah.
Okay, calling from.
Yeah, from Niger State.
Oh, good to have you on the show.
All right.
Okay.
I'm really enjoying the program, but I think I'm not really disagreeing with your analysis there. But I think what you said is true. But considering what you are seeing in the society today, there are some marriages that the spouse are very difficult.
Okay.
Very extremely difficult. In fact, I would like to tell you that some spouses, maybe I don't know, due to their inability to acquire knowledge of life properly, because there are some women that are really not up to the standard of the husband, for example, and the husband is trying to bring her up, and they also have difficulties with their temperament and I don't know. So what I'm saying is that sometimes if your spouse understanding will add up to this advice the analyst is giving. There are some women that you really have to take your own personal decision, but you find a way to manage it to make them understand why you took that decision, and at the end of the day, it will all go well for the both parties. That's what I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you so
Smile,
much.
if I got that name correct.
Yes.
Yeah, some women who probably maybe there's an intellectual gap. You're trying to paint a picture of a particular thing that you need to do,
Yes.
and because you're sure they may not buy, or they may not fully understand.
They won't understand.
And so you go ahead, you take that decision, and then when there's a result at the end, you come back and tell them, okay, I took that decision. Either way, you've involved them one way or the other. Right? So it's not a secret. Right? It's not a secret. It is where you're just running things by yourself, not minding whether or not they are there, whether or not they cooperate, whether or not they accept whatever you do.
Because you're afraid of how they react.
Because you're afraid of how they react. But in the end, like he said, you still come back and tell them, say, okay, I took this particular decision, or I had to make this decision on behalf of both of us, and so this is it. But I do hope that it is not only when the results are positive that you come back and say, I took this decision. Even when the results don't go the way you actually intended, well, of course, you come back at that point and she has the right to say, you ought to have told me. Yeah, no matter how difficult you may say they are, because both of you have agreed, you're on a journey, you're building together, right? And so if you're going to change the mix at any point in time, then the other person needs to know whether or not the person is strong, whether or not the person is not strong, whether or not the person is reasonable or the person is unreasonable. And you see, marriage in decisions like this in marriage has to do with you understanding the other person. You've lived with this person for a while, you've stayed with this person, you understand this person, and this may not be the first your first decision might not be the first decision. No decision might be the first decision you're ever taking at all.
Okay.
You've taken other decisions. The outcomes have varied. Some have turned out well, some haven't turned out well. How did they react at each instance? That should give you a line of saying, okay, this, you should be able to predict a level of predictability, to predict and say, okay, if this thing happens this way or it happens that way, then this is probably this person's line of reaction. And so if you factor all those in your decision, it's as good as carrying them along, right? It's as good as carrying. You may not ask them physically, but okay, will this person buy in? Would she really, is this person risk averse? Let's talk about business, for instance. Does this person like taking risks, or the person doesn't like taking risks?
Okay.
When you consider all those involved, especially when the funds have to be a collective fund, maybe family funds that you're pulling together, and you need to invest or put it in one venture or the other, you need to ask yourself these questions, right? Have you ever lost money in a business, both of you, whether she knows, how did the person react? You take all those things into consideration before making such decision. And so even if you don't tell the person physically, but for the fact that you sat down to gauge their reactions, in the outcome of the decision you're taking, then you still in one way or the other.
So the bottom line is you shouldn't keep anything from each other. You shouldn't. That's what marriage entails. Don't keep anything from each other.
Yeah, don't keep anything.
No matter the reaction.
No matter the reaction. It's best you err on the side of
goodness. Oh, may God help us
all.
Yes.
You don't keep anything at all.
All right. So let's go back to the effects.
Yeah. Okay.
Keeping secrets.
Yes, because it's like the foundation of a building upon which any structure stands. Everything stands on the foundation, right? But we use buildings most of the time. So if secrets are like faults in the foundation or faults in the structure, whether at lintel level, once a secret comes in, it means you probably didn't wait for the lintel to cure, or the cement mix is not what it should be. So that's why so once a secret creeps in, there is loss of trust completely. Once something is found to be a secret, once a spouse knows that this particular person isn't telling me everything, then they start going back to check. What else are you not telling me?
True.
And even if there's nothing else, at that point in time, they're just wondering, what else are you not telling me? Okay? And so one thing secrets do is that it erodes trust. And trust, it may take time to rebuild. Because you build trust over time, right? And so once that trust is lost, there's nothing you tell that the person does not take with a pinch of salt, because they may try as hard as it is, and we always advise to say, let go. Trust the person once again. Let go of whatever error the person has done. The person is willing to change. Let go of that. But hey, we're humans. There are times when that thing still creeps up and says,
yes, it does.
This was how last time, this was how the last time I was asking, you were telling me it's nothing. How did he end up? And so it shakes everything. And that's the reason why, for you to have peace of mind, for you to have, okay, let me give you an instance, right? You're married, and in Nigeria we have a lot of dependents. When we're married, you still have siblings, you have in-laws, you have parents and all that are dependent on you for one thing or the other. And then you have to reach out, maybe financially, reach out and give them some little thing. You won't say, okay, they are my parents, and so I don't need to tell my wife that I'm spending XYZ amount, or I didn't need to tell my husband it's my money. I didn't have to ask him for the money. It's my money, and so I'm reaching out. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to give the way the way I want. That is outrightly wrong. Whether or not it's your money that you need to reach out and give to somebody else, you don't keep it a secret. You tell your husband, I'm reaching out to this person. I'm sending XYZ amount to this person. I'm sending XYZ amount, whether it's to your own siblings or to your in-laws,
or to
whoever it is. As long as that money is coming from a pool, whether when you spent it, the money was in your account or it was in your joint account, whichever way at all, the other person has just got to know. You've got to let them know, okay, I'm making this particular expenditure. It is for this. It is for this purpose. If you're bringing in a new person, you're taking on a new responsibility, in addition to the ones you've already taken. The other spouse, ought to also be aware of. But the moment and time you don't tell them, and they get to understand,
and they get to hear
from someone else. Yeah, they get to and telling them also helps, because it helps put in-laws or siblings who want to double play you in check.
Yes.
Because I reached out to a sibling, and then I gave him a particular money, and then behind my back he goes and meets my wife and says, I need money, and then because I didn't tell her, she goes ahead and gives, and he collects double. But then by the time you are aware, the person also knows that, look, I can't call this person again, because both of them know. Because her husband probably knows, or the wife probably knows that she has reached out. So you put such things in check. And so everything is going on together. And like I said earlier, that way you avoid any events that happen along the way that you need to hide from your spouse.
Okay, before I go into what I have in mind, let's remind our callers of the number to call. 081-084-47518. 081-084-47518. Well, that's now, I've had cases whereby the man says, oh, it depends on the amount of money given out. If it's small, let me say small as 5,000, you can. Okay, I'll get back to that. We have another caller on the line. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Luhu. I'm calling from Dawaki.
Your name is?
Luhu.
Luhu. Okay. Nice to have you on the show, Luhu. Yes.
Concerning what the last caller said.
Okay.
Yes. He said the wife is not up to the husband's standards. I think he's wrong
Okay.
concerning marriage. Is education part of standard for marriage?
Okay.
I should place that question to you.
Okay. Okay, that's his question now.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Nuhu. Thank you for that question. Yes, I think what he meant by.
Okay, please just hold on. There's another caller. You will
right.
get back to that. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Okay, my name is Mr. West.
Okay, Mr. West.
Yes. I'm calling from Jabi.
Okay.
My own is a question.
All right.
In a situation where one of the spouse has a good knowledge of a business that could fetch them money, and then he brings it to the table, and then the other spouse refuses the key into it. In that situation, did you get my message, my question?
No, we didn't get it properly. Please repeat.
Okay, I said, in a situation where, can you hear me, man?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Yeah. In a situation where spouse Mr. A has a good idea of a business that will fetch them money,
Okay.
and then he brings it to the table, and then the spouse Mr. B refuses to key into the idea. At that point, what will you do?
Okay, you heard him.
Yes. All right, thank you, Mr. West. Okay, so in reaction to the question Nuhu asked earlier, whether or not education is part of the requirement for marriage, right? But what I understand from the question the gentleman asked earlier regarding the wife not being up to his standard, I took that question from the standpoint of saying that was just for lack of the exact way to express himself.
Exactly.
Right? So when he said not up to standard, meaning, and then when I was taking the question, I did say there's a level of communication. Okay,
Okay, just hold on.
Okay.
You'll still get back to it. Hello. Yes. What's your name and where are you calling from? Good evening. Okay, you are. Shola.
My contribution is, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. If you, for instance, you have a situation where a man or a woman, you have a property sometimes somewhere before you got married,
Okay.
and then you told them, the moment they know of the first one, they're already asking you to put it up for sale. Okay? And then you notice greed, you notice like being greedy.
Okay.
So maybe there's another one. Will you go ahead and keep paying so that he keeps telling you to sell the things you offered? Well, that's one.
Okay.
And not some of them also. Maybe you placed your parents on salary
Okay.
before you got married, and now you're married. And he's like, hey, you have to reduce it. You have to do this. You're trying to run your life. Maybe you've run your life for 24 years, 25 years. Now you're married. He's coming to tell you, cut the salary. It is too much.
Okay.
And it is this. And then at the end of the day, maybe you're obliged.
Okay.
The next thing, he is now collecting that same money and giving to his own family. I mean, what do? You keep telling him. So when you get to his office, you go ahead and tell him when you know that he's going to make sure he runs you down to your last penny. Like, he doesn't want to see you have a kobo. So maybe you're earning XYZ amount and they've added something. He expands the expenses to make sure at the end of every month you're left with no kobo. I mean, I don't understand. I don't know how, especially for women. You know, women, I feel a lot of women that have such issues and their husbands are like leeching the life out of them because he wants the whole thing for himself.
Yes.
How do you balance that? As they tell you he's the head of the house. So how do you balance that? You want to live a good life. That was why you worked hard in the first place. That was why you went to school in the first place. You studied hard and God helped ease. And now suddenly somebody wants to drag you down the road of lack and not having anything for savings. I don't know how to balance that. I think there will be secrecy.
She has said that. All right, so Mr. Kumba, if you can quickly.
Very quickly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll listen for the answer.
All right, please just hold it.
All right.
Just
So Nuhu,
Mr. Kumba, let's take another call.
Okay.
We'll answer all the questions. Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Hello, good evening. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yeah, this is Babatunde. I'm calling from Abuja.
Okay.
Thank
Nice
you.
to have you on the show.
Okay. I want to appreciate both of you for what you really analyze this very easy.
Okay.
So, you are talking of marriage. Marriage is not for kids, it's not for children. Marriage is in between both mature people. And again, Bible let us know that if the foundation of a believer being destroyed, what can a righteous one do? If the foundation of marriage is destroyed, what can both spouses do? Now, the person that you are getting married to, how is our standard in terms of marriage? You cannot understand the person of marriage. Can she handle man proper when you have an urgency situation in which you need to attend to? And when you try to call the spouse, your wife, look what I get into. In fact, maybe she will be at negative side in which you won't welcome that.
Okay.
So, this man is saying you don't keep secret for woman. Both of you don't have to keep secret.
Okay.
But there's some tendency that will keep secret the thing, but because in as much you allow everything that's going in your life, unnecessary or woman will ruin your life. Especially when I don't understand what the foundation and the standing of marriage.
When there's no understanding.
In which the women are ruined and they are nothing today. But the point is that in terms of marriage, truly according to scripture, you don't keep secret. But for me, there's area you can keep secret for future purpose. When you expose yourself to some woman, they won't understand you. I know of a woman which is a breadwinner, and she's the one bought the car for the husband. Since when the man graduated from the university, he has not do any job up to date, as I'm telling you now. But this woman, she provide car, she built house, she do everything. Whatsoever the man is requesting from the home, is this woman cater for this home, train the true children, university, honestly. But the point is that they are being honest to their faith. They are being faithful to their faith. But in the other way around, in which one are not understanding. The other one was talking that if one has to work, you have big faith, and the one understand what the planning of marriage, or you have to expand, or you have to grow, or to grow up the family, or to what, or to have a better future, a better life. You understand? Now, you try to bring this at the random table. I know, it happened to me. I used $1 million plus Oppo business with my wife. To God be the glory. I don't know where that money is work is in giving. But today's story, tomorrow's story, I'm not bringing a negative side of her. I have my own work, my own point, in which she don't like. But the point that if the two come together, honestly, in time coming, the man will suffer it. Honestly, many times, when a woman, maybe their children have work, they have delivered, they are somewhere in Lagos, they are in Abuja, they are in Port Harcourt, you know, the woman will go for Omago, and the woman will be at home, you know, at the old age.
Thank you so much.
One thing or the other, no, happen to the man. But however, so let the both of them come together.
Yes, and understand themselves.
And understand themselves.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's understanding. We live and talk.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. All right, thank you for your contribution. All right, so please, Mr. Kumba, think you can quickly go through the answers.
Very quickly, Mr. Nuhu, when we took that, I answered that question. It wasn't about education being part of marriage. What we talked about was the person not being able to I took it from the standpoint of maybe the wife. Maybe when you talk about stock exchange, for instance, the man wants to go into stock. She doesn't understand what stock is all about. And so I took it from that standpoint. And so sometimes there are intellectual gaps, not because education is a requirement, but the person doesn't have full knowledge about that. And then West asked the question. And Mr. West, I think your question actually boils down to the fact that sometimes you just need to take certain decisions, whether or not the woman knows or doesn't know about it. But what I think you do, Mr. West, is that, or what applies here is that whatever it is that will lead to you having to keep a secret from your spouse, if you need to take the decision that she would not understand or that she will only see the negative side of the particular idea, but it still behoves on you to make her understand why this particular thing is.
Instead of keeping it as a secret.
Instead of keeping it as a secret and just doing it behind her back, because if there's a repercussion, you could have legal cases as a result of that. And then she just wakes up and then you're served legal case. Explaining at that point in time makes it cumbersome, makes it difficult, and then it makes it sound like she's not even part of your plans at all. You know, you've agreed to sail the ship together with this woman. She's your co-pilot, she's your co-captain, and so you need to carry along in this decision. And then Mrs. Shola, if we got the name correctly, you talk about property, whether having a property as a single person, and then you got married, and then the person is asking either to sell it off or if there are other properties that he or she isn't aware of. The beautiful thing is that you owned up to let the person know, or to let your husband know, that you had a property that you owned before you got married. Now, whether or not that property is earning, whether you're generating revenue from that property, is something that both of you will need to sit down and agree on, right? Where does that money apportion? It should be your decision, though, because I don't see why a man should 100% depend on the woman for certain things. It's her finances, and it should be her decision to bring in. The man is made to cater. The man is made to provide. Yes, there are instances where the woman will have to bring in support, and so it shouldn't be a decision. So it shouldn't be okay if there are any other properties as well. But you shouldn't be married to a man where you buy properties behind his back. If there are properties you owned while you were single, then you should agree the terms regarding those properties. They remain in your name, fine. You want to change it into the spouse's name, fine. But you shouldn't be in marriage and then you acquire properties while in marriage without the knowledge of your spouse. And if that property is generating revenue, then everything should be on the table. The man should know. Then talking about the salary, that you placed your parents on a salary. As long as that salary you placed your parents, it's been in existence. If you will need to increase it while you are married, then it should be by mutual agreement, whereby that increment does not affect the running of the home. It does not affect whatever it is that you're doing. If you're going to take an extra job, whereby the hours do not affect your role in the household as a wife, if you need to take an extra job just to maintain that salary, it's fine. But as long as the salary you placed your parents on do not affect whatever responsibility. I mean, when you talk about responsibility, yes, there is this wokeness that we have today, and say, okay, the woman has to also be a breadwinner, she has to also provide. There's beauty in that as well, where the woman also has to contribute, okay? But then it shouldn't be. No man should not say, okay, I'm sharing, the responsibilities of the home. There are instances where that is happening, but if the man can, you need to work extra hours, be the one to put food on the table. But there are instances where the woman also helps. And then the last contributor was, I think it was a contribution.
It was just a
that
contribution.
When you open up, the woman may ruin your life and all whatnot. But I think what is lacking there is accountability. That I'm married to you and that the man is married to a woman and he uses a certain amount of money to set up a business for her, and then you don't know where the money went to. There should be accountability at every point in time, you know. Audits, the checks and balance. And so, Mrs. Shola, I really understand, and I wish we had more time regarding
to really talk about
this. But if you owned the property before you got married, right? I don't know when you let the man know, okay, that I own the property. Was it before you got married? If it was before you got married, the terms and agreements, regarding that property, should be said. But then you shouldn't remain in the marriage, because the man is asking, are there other properties? He probably asking is, other properties while you were single, or other properties now that we're married? Have you acquired any property? You shouldn't be married to a man or married to a woman and you acquire properties without their knowledge. That in itself is a sin.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Kumba. I'm sure had it been we had more time, would have talked more about this very exciting issue. Thank you so much for coming, for generously investing your time to be here, for answering me anytime I call you. Thank you so much. Well, we have come to the end of this very exciting talk. Thank you to our dear listeners for always being there for us. Thank you, and I hope you will be there next week, same time, same station, on Monday and Wednesday for more interesting topics. I remain your host, Uche Chukwuma. Bye for now.